Hey guys, so I'll be making a prediction for the 2022 Senate races, and these races will be very important as they will decide whether or not Joe Biden will be able to get things passed through the Senate during the second half of his term. You saw with Barack Obama, after Barack Obama lost control of Congress, he really was not able to get too much done. Really, his main achievement was Obamacare, which was done, pretty quickly in his first 2 years when he controlled both the House and the Senate by huge margins. But after he lost the houses of Congress, he was not able to get as much done, and everything that he did was much less ambitious as he needed to get Republicans on board with the legislation that he proposed as well. So taking a look at the Senate map here for the 2022 Senate elections, the Republicans start off with 30 safe seats, the Democrats 36 safe seats. So the Democrats do technically start off with an advantage, but Republicans, they have a lot more states that are very solid for them. So before we get started, make sure you join my Discord server if you have not, the link to which is at the very top of the description below. So I'm going to start off by filling in the solid states for the Democrats and the Republicans. Democrats, of course, going to win, a sweep across the West Coast. And then in California, you have Alex Padilla, who may face a primary challenger. He, of course, replaced Kamala Harris, who became the vice president, is the current vice president. He was appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom, and he will have to be up for re-election in 2022, a special election because he is being appointed. In the state of Hawaii as well, that will go to the Democrats, of course. And then New York, this is Chuck Schumer's seat. There's been a little bit of talk about AOC running against Chuck Schumer. I think that'd be a really bad idea for her. I don't think she can beat the Senate Majority Leader. Although New York is a very liberal state, it is a little bit more of the it does support Chuck Schumer a little bit more than the progressives in New York. It's really only New York City that has, the huge progressive population. So Chuck Schumer will probably still be able to fend off AOC. And then you have Connecticut, Vermont with Angus King there, as well as, not Angus King, you have what's his name? In Vermont, you have Patrick Leahy. So Patrick Leahy in Vermont, he's up for re-election. He's currently the pres pro tem because he's the oldest Democrat in the Senate. And you also have Colorado, which is going to be a likely margin, but it's still definitely a seat that the Democrats will win with Michael Bennet. And then for the Republican Party, you have Idaho, Utah, as well as many of these other seats here as well. The South will all be red, as well as Kansas and South Carolina, along with Kentucky and Indiana. In the race in Alaska, it's going to be likely because, of ranked choice voting and also how split the Alaskan electorate is. Lisa Murkowski is very, very popular. She just recently got endorsed by Joe Manchin, a Democrat. Joe Manchin, is one of the more, definitely one of the more moderate Democrats, and Lisa Murkowski, one of the more moderate Republicans. So Joe Manchin, Democrat, has endorsed Lisa Murkowski for re-election. I think that Lisa Murkowski is definitely a very strong candidate in Arizona, but many of the Trumpers do want to get rid of her, especially Donald Trump. But that's going to be an issue because the establishment Republicans do support Lisa Murkowski. They don't want to spend extra money defeating a seat that they have pretty solidly. And Lisa Murkowski, when she lost the GOP nomination in 2012, I believe, 2010, she came back, she did a writing campaign, and she even won. So Lisa Murkowski definitely very strong in Alaska. This gives the Republicans 43 seats. Now, on top of that, I do also want to include two other seats here. First, in the state of Iowa, this one is currently held by Chuck Grassley. Chuck Grassley currently has not announced whether or not he's running or not. He will be in his early to mid 90s if he does win another term. He's currently, I believe, 87, 88 years old. He would be around 94, 95 if he were to win another term. And I think that, although it's unlikely that he does run again, you do have Diane Feinstein, who is in her 90s, and she is still in the Senate representing California, and she'll be up for re-election in 2024. And I don't think she's going to run for another term. I don't think she's going to be in her hundreds in the Senate. But for Chuck Grassley, I think it's definitely possible that he does run. If not, it's going to be his grandson, Pat Grassley, who is going to be the nominee. So for right now, I'm going to put that in the middle as a likely margin for Iowa. If Chuck Grassley does run, then definitely it'll be very, very solid. He easily wins over 60% of the votes there in Iowa. But for his grandson, I think it'll definitely be a little bit harder, but still at least a likely margin in Iowa. And then Ohio as well. This is another seat that I'm going to give currently as lean. The nominees there for the Republicans, I believe it's going to be Jane Timken, and then for the Democrats, Tim Ryan. I don't think Tim Ryan is especially the strongest candidate, but he may do well in Ohio, but still his chances of winning are still really, really small. And I don't think that Ohio is really going to be one of the more watched races. So I'm going to put Ohio in the lean column for the Republican Party for now. And the final seat that I'm going to put in this column is the state of Florida. So for the state of Florida, I'm going to put as lean for Marco Rubio. It definitely could be likely like it was for him in 2016. 2016, but still, it's still Florida, and it's still going to be, competitive no matter what, just because of the nature of this state. So the first state I want to talk about on this map, so now you have the Republicans at 46 and the Democrats also at 46, and really the states that are up left, you have Nevada and Arizona with Democratic incumbents, Georgia and New Hampshire with Democratic incumbents. So 4 of these states have Democratic incumbents, and then in these 4 states, North Carolina, Missouri, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, you have 4 Republican incumbents. Now the issue here is that basically every single Democrat is running for re-election, and incumbents do better. You saw in Maine, Susan Collins, her, a 5th-time incumbent, even though she was poised to lose against Sarah Gideon in 2020, she still won her race by over 9 points. You saw incumbent Steve Daines in Montana. He was also able to win his race in Montana. Incumbents do typically always do better than their first time, unless they are very unpopular, like, say, someone like Ted Cruz or Roy Blunt in Missouri. So, speaking of Roy Blunt, Missouri, Roy Blunt is retiring in Missouri, so I'm going to put that as tilt. I'm just going to use that color to show which states Republicans are retiring in. You have Pat Toomey retiring in Pennsylvania, and you also have Richard Burr retiring in North Carolina. These are all incumbent senators in these 3 states, especially North Carolina, Pennsylvania, very, very important states, and states that the Republicans do need to hold on to if they want to win the Senate. And then in Ohio, you have Rob Portman, who also decided to retire, and in Alabama, I forgot who it was, but you also have a retiree there, although he's not too important. But Ohio, it's gonna be an open seat as well. And then Ron Johnson, actually, in 2016, Ron Johnson announced that he would not be running for a 3rd term in 2022. He has taken those words back, but he, currently has not announced that he will be running again either. He said, he's going to wait until the fall to make an announcement. Chuck Grassley as well. So definitely, I think Wisconsin could be a seat in which the Republicans have a retiring incumbent with Ron Johnson. He's not that old. He's in his mid-60s, so he could plausibly run for re-election. But right now, it's not too clear what he will do. But Missouri, especially Pennsylvania, this I think is a big deal with Pat Toomey retiring. He's not even old. He's just, cited how difficult it is, to get things passed in the Senate nowadays. In North Carolina with Richard Burr, it's gonna be a difficult uphill battle for Republicans in Pennsylvania, especially, and Wisconsin, because these 2 states were both Biden states in the 2020 election. Biden won Pennsylvania by 1.2% and Wisconsin by 0.63%, and he only lost North Carolina by 1.3% and made huge gains off of 2016, where Trump won it by 3.7%. So definitely these are going to be some issues the Republican Party is going to have to face. But looking at the race in Missouri specifically, currently the 2 nominees that have the highest chance are Eric Schmidt and Eric Greitens. So Eric Greitens, he is the former governor of the state of Missouri. He resigned in 2018. He resigned because of sexual blackmail allegations. So not just sexual assault or harassment, but sexual blackmail. And he basically blackmailed someone, and there was going to be an investigation, but he resigned before that happened. And on top of that, the Republican Party in the state said that there was good reason to believe that the allegations were true against Eric Greitens, and that's really why he resigned in the end. His chances have increased a lot, and that is a really bad sign. And the last time you saw the Republicans nominate someone like this was Roy Moore in Alabama, and he lost to Doug Jones in literally this state right here. Alabama went to the Democrats in the 2018 special election with Doug Jones versus Roy Moore. So definitely it's going to be an uphill battle for Eric Greitens. He is popular among the GOP, but among independents and as well as Democrats in the state, definitely not as much, and that's going to be an issue for them. And so because of Eric Greitens' huge chance, I'm going to put Missouri as lean. And if you look at the 2016 results with Roy Blunt only won re-election in 2016 in the state of Missouri over Jason Kander. Jason Kander was definitely a very strong candidate, but Roy Blunt, still the Republican incumbent, didn't even win 50% of the vote in a state that Donald Trump was able to carry by 18.6%. Trump wins 56%. Roy Blunt, the incumbent from the state, he is, from this state, and he only campaigned in this state, he won 49.2% of the vote. So Roy Blunt, I think him retiring was definitely a good decision. He probably would still win re-election in 2022 just because of how red the state is, but still definitely really weak performance from him in 2016. If you look at his first margin in 2010, he was able to win by over 13 points, which was definitely much better, but Jason Kander was a particularly strong candidate, but he was unable to defeat Roy Blunt in this race. And so that's going to make Missouri a lean state on this map. The next state I do want to take a look at is the state of Georgia. Looking at the state of Georgia, currently the Democrats will, of course, nominate their incumbent Raphael Warnock. The state is currently held by a Democrat. Warnock, of course, won the January 5th runoffs in Georgia. He defeated incumbent Senator Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed, so that was a special election. And so in 2022, Doug Collins, Kelly Loeffler, and Raphael Warnock ran in the same race. Doug Collins and Loeffler were both Republicans, and they basically split the Republican vote, which is why there was a runoff, and Doug Collins came in third, so it was Loeffler versus Warnock in that runoff race. But Doug Collins now has the highest chance of winning. Kelly Loeffler there at 4 cents, and David Perdue, who's the other senator that lost, he's only at 3. It's not going to be Loeffler or Perdue. That's not going to happen. But for the Republican Party with Doug Collins, the issue for him here is that Herschel Walker is a pretty strong candidate. He is a former NFL player. His chances have increased over the last couple of weeks. And the issue for Doug Collins is that Donald Trump supports Herschel Walker. Donald Trump wants Herschel Walker to run. If Herschel Walker does run and Trump endorses Herschel Walker, I think that's definitely going to be a big boost to his campaign and can definitely hurt Doug Collins, who who still does have a pretty good chance of winning that nomination, but it's definitely not set in stone for him. He can definitely still lose it. And so for Donald Trump to endorse Herschel Walker, that would definitely be a really big boost to his campaign that he has not announced yet. So for the state of Georgia, I currently do have Raphael Warnock winning with a tilt margin. I think this will definitely be the closest race for the Democrats. I do think it'll be closer than New Hampshire because Georgia, it was really only flipped by Joe Biden in 2020 by the smallest of margins, 0.23%. And even on the Senate level, John Ossoff only won by 1.2% and Raphael Warnock 2.1%. So pretty strong margins, but they were running against particularly weak Republicans in David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. And, these are Republicans, many Republicans were upset with their party in the state because Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger both disagreed to the results being rigged in Georgia and Donald Trump losing there on the presidential election. So many Republicans were very upset about that and just didn't show up. But many Democrats definitely did, and Stacey Abrams had a lot to do with that. And I think that if she does run for governor, it could definitely give Raphael Warnock a boost because I think a lot of people will come out for Stacey Abrams in 2022. I don't think Brian Kemp can win re-election in 2022 if Stacey Abrams does run. It'll be very difficult for him. But Georgia definitely is going to be a tilt race on this map. The next thing I want to take a look at is North Carolina. Now, this is going to be a big one. Pat McCrory is currently the expected nominee for the Republican Party on top of Laura Trump. I think both these candidates would be terrible. Laura Trump is not going to be a senator. That's just not going to happen. Pat McCrory, I think, has a better chance, but Laura Trump is the wife of Eric Trump, son of Donald Trump. But for Pat McCrory, he's the former governor of the state. But the issue for him is that he lost his re-election in 2016. He lost to Roy Cooper, who was just re-elected in 2020, but he was very unpopular in the state. And, this was a Republican state. He lost in 2016 when Trump won the state by almost 4%. So he lost to Roy Cooper in the state of North Carolina in the gubernatorial race. And so he's now running, again in 2022 for a Senate seat 6 years later. His chances have been pretty high. Before it was Mark Walker, who was at, 55 at one point. Now he's all the way down at 17, but neither of these candidates would do well. For the Democrats, I believe it's currently expected to be Jeff Jackson, who is the nominee. He's pretty popular and a very good fundraiser, which is pretty important. So for North Carolina, I do have the Democrats winning just because I think that the Republicans have very poor candidates in the state with Laura Trump and Pat McCrory. I think that'll definitely be an issue for them. And looking at the state of Pennsylvania, this is another big one. But before we get into this, I do want to fill in Nevada. I do think Nevada will go to the Democratic Party. I think it's going to be lean for Catherine Cortez Masto. She won her first election by 4% in 2018. If you look at the map here, 2016. So you have Catherine Cortez Masto won by 2.4%. Over Joe Heck, I believe. And so for Catherine Cortez Masto, I think that as an incumbent, in a state that is more blue than red, I think that she'll be able to win her re-election. And then in New Hampshire as well, I have a tilt for Maggie Hassan, who won in 2016 over Kelly Ayotte by just 0.14%, Ayotte being the incumbent. So Hassan was able to defeat an incumbent. These two people in 2016, they were both at one point governors of the state of New Hampshire. But the problem is that the state currently has a Republican governor in Chris Sununu, who is the only Republican that has a chance at defeating Maggie Hassan, and they never ran against each other before. But for Chris Sununu, he is very popular in the state. If he runs, he can definitely have a very good chance, and I'm making this projection off of the assumption that he's going to run. If not, it's going to be likely at least for Maggie Hassan. But if Chris Sununu runs, and it's very high likelihood that he does, it's going to be an issue for them. And I do think that it would be smart, for him personally, for Chris Sununu to run in 2022. So moving on to now the state of Pennsylvania, I have this as lean for the Democratic Party because in Pennsylvania you have Joe Fetterman, who is expected to be the nominee, and I think he's definitely a very, very strong nominee for the state, and he's a lieutenant governor, very popular, and with this being an open seat, he can definitely win, and that's why the chances of Democrats flipping this seat is so high at 61 cents right now. So this will be a blue seat, putting Democrats up at 51. I also have the Democrats winning in Arizona with Mark Kelly. I think Mark Kelly is definitely a strong candidate. I don't think the margin will be huge for Mark Kelly. If you look at 2020, basically he won a special election, so he'll be up for re-election in 2022. But Mark Kelly won by 2.3% in 2020 over Martha McSally. That was an okay margin, but Martha McSally had a really loss against Kirsten Sinema in 2018, and she was a pretty weak candidate. So somebody who's better nominated, I think, could go down to tilt. This will give the Democrats 52, and for the Republicans, with Ron Johnson not yet saying that he will retire, I will give the state of Wisconsin to the Republican Party. Currently in the state of Wisconsin, or I don't have Wisconsin here, I guess. If I can find it, I can show you guys. But for Wisconsin, the betting odds right now in Wisconsin are pretty close, as you can see, 54-46. So not much has really changed. But Ron Johnson definitely would be the nominee that the Republicans do want in this state. So this puts the Republicans up at 48 and the Democrats at 52. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like it down below if you enjoyed it. Join my Discord server if you have not. Link at the very top of the description below. Comment down below which party you think will win the 2022 Senate races. Subscribe to my channel if you have not. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.